Breaking news for your home. Way Day is here. It's Wayfair's big sale, where you can score the best deals in home, like up to 80% off with free shipping on everything. Plus surprise flash deals all Way Day long. You won't find better deals for your home anywhere else. We're talking furniture, decor, rugs, and more, all at Wayfair, and all up to 80% off during Way Day. So don't wait. Shop Wayfair's Way Day now through April 27th to score the best deals in home.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Welcome to the Medical Nursing Podcast, the go-to show for vet nurses and technicians passionate about internal medicine. I'm Laura Jones, a registered vet nurse, all-around medical nursing nerd, and your guide to breaking down complex medical diseases into simple, actionable chunks. Each episode is packed with knowledge and tips that you can start using right away to give even better patient care. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Medical Nursing Podcast. Welcome back if you're a regular listener, and or welcome if it is your first time tuning in today. Today, for episode 111 of the podcast, we are doing something a little bit different. I have been wanting to sit down with this person for a really long time. So today I'm going to be chatting to Alyssa Mages, who is a certified veterinary technician over in the US who runs Empowering Veterinary Teams. Liz is a really inspirational and wonderful human being who I've kind of connected with online for quite a long time now, since 2020, I think. And she and I got the opportunity to speak face to face at London Vet Show towards the end of last year, where I watched her give a TED-style talk on veterinary nursing versus veterinary technicians, the differences, but more importantly than that, the similarities. Now, this is a conversation that I have wanted to bring to the podcast for a long time. I have a increasing US audience, and last year, some of the social media content that I started sharing was pushed by the algorithm to reach a primarily American audience. And one thing that became really clear from the comments that came through is just how different things are. So some of the things that we can do in the UK, for example, legally are not the same as what technicians can do in the US. And I thought, what better person to sit down and speak to everyone about this than Alyssa? So over the next half an hour or so, Alyssa and I are going to sit down and chat all things veterinary nursing and veterinary technology, how we are different, but more importantly than that, how we are the same. We're going to be speaking about the challenges that we are facing on a global scale, really, for the entire profession. But more importantly than that, we're going to be talking about what we can do to improve those day to day in practice. We're going to be talking about utilisation. We're going to be talking about the cost to our practices of not utilising our skills as nurses and technicians, and so much more. So I really hope that you enjoy this episode and that you get lots of inspiration from Liz's words of wisdom. Hi, Alyssa. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, Laura, it's lovely to be with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so excited to finally have you on. I know we've been chatting about it for a long time.
A few years.
I know, quite a few years. What, 5 years?
Well, maybe not the podcast per se, but yes.
Yes, not the podcast itself, but yeah. So I am really, really excited for everyone to hear from you today and experience your words of wisdom. Alyssa is a certified vet technician, a fellow of veterinary technician education. Is that right?
That is correct.
You did her research. And chief visionary officer at Empowering Veterinary Teams. And on top of that, just all-round awesome, inspirational human. So could you please tell our audience a little bit about you?
Yes, I'm not just, I always yell at people, I'm just this. So no one's just anything, right? That's my whole catchphrase, and I nearly blew it. So I've been in vet med since 2004. I got my credentials in 2012. So I was what we call over here in the States a street tech. That's what us old school folks say. My undergrad is in marine biology. So that was the original plan, was to be a marine vet, and life happens and things change. And I got my acceptance letter to veterinary school the week after I found out I was going to be a mom. So I went that route based upon my mentor's advice, and I haven't looked back since, which has been fabulous. So I've worked in pretty much every vector you can of this field, right? So I've done small animal GP, I've done large animal, I've done wildlife, I've done lab animal, but my passion was emergency critical care and anesthesia. I also love oncology. I spent 3 years in that service when I was in the specialty fields. And then I discovered that I liked teaching like a lot and wondered how I could combine the two of those things. So I spent a few years in academia teaching at my alma mater, which was quite the experience, full circle moment. And then they created a position at the last practice I worked at called the Learning and Development Coordinator. So I had a team of 12 trainers, and I developed the training program for this practice. It's 250 team members, including, facilities, and there's 50 doctors or so, or even bigger now, I think. But it's not a finite role, right? And so it was definitely a combination of I want to do more, and also my body was like, and you need to do less. So I have Ehlers-Danlos, and if those of you that aren't familiar with that syndrome, it's hypermobility, yes, but it's not simply your joints, right? So it impacts your cardiovascular and your GI. So my body was like, and you're done. Figure something else out. And I was like, it's the pandemic. What do I do? So a dear friend of mine, gosh, she might hit me later for this, but we've been friends for 24 years. We both were in the similar situation. We wanted to do more. So we launched Empowering Veterinary Teams, EVT, in 2020. I left clinical practice in that summer. And it is a training consultancy essentially, but it's a bit more than that. There's three pillars towards it. We do EV training, which is going into practices and building training programs, one-on-one coaching, things like that. EV Talk, which is where we go out and do workshops and practices and also speak on the national, international circuit at this point. And then EV Time, which is products and things like that. So I invented and then worked with a production company. We sell luminal training veins, the really tiny ones for cats, and parts for IC injections and injection pads. And we're working on patenting a male feline urinary tract, so unblocking practices. So it's essentially taking everything that I didn't have from school into practice and making sure it's there, because I do not believe in the I suffered, so too shall you movement. It's quite the opposite, exactly. So we're involved in a lot of things in the profession, mentorship, very heavily invested in supporting our the DEIB movements, particularly needed right now in the States,
For sure.
and mental health support as well. So we launched a nonprofit in conjunction with members of the Bridge Club last year called Project Sticker. So my business partner primarily focuses on that. She's the behind the scenes. I'm in the front being the loudmouth lime that most of you might have known me to be. And our biggest thing right now is we're writing a textbook. So actually, those of you in the UK might know Vet Empowered just a teeny little bit.
Yeah.
So Katie and Claire were kind enough to lend us some of their words of wisdom that will be incorporated into this volume. So it's 12 chapters. It's called Veterinary Training and Team Empowerment, and it's heading into the first round of editing at Wiley next month.
Wow. That intro has just blown my mind.
This is who I am. Sorry.
I told you she was an all-around awesome human. Now you can hear for yourself why. Okay, it's funny you say about international speaking, because that international speaking is kind of the catalyst, I guess, for us getting together and chatting today.
Yeah.
Because this is how we finally met offline in real life, was at London Vet Show last year, where you came to give a like TED Talk style chat about UK versus US nursing technology, how it's different, how we're the same. And I really wanted to bring that conversation to the podcast, because I've had an increasing amount of my social media content, for example, reach US audiences. And one thing
Good. We need more of you over here.
one thing it really highlighted was how different things are, because a lot of the comments I was getting were like, oh, actually, we can't do this and we can do this and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, well, this is really interesting. What we need to do is bring more people from different backgrounds together to share their experiences and talk about what the differences are, yes, but more than that, where the similarities are and how we can work together.
100%. And I love how you phrase that. Yes, we are different. However, right, there is so much more that unites us than divides us. If only we thought of those things in so many different realms. I digress. But yes, it's a challenge, right? Because there's not enough unified regulation over here, and that's part of the problem. I know that has been a struggle for you folks across the pond too. So it's getting that standardization, that legalization to get that footing on so that you can continue to grow the profession.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really interesting because I was in Australia a couple of weeks ago at a conference and they're having similar challenges as well. So it really is like a global challenge that we're facing as a profession. But I guess what makes it more challenging for the US is in the UK, we're a small country and we have one regulatory body that oversees us, which makes things, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still challenging, but it's easier than a collection of states where every state has different, post
Hmm.
nominals and regulations and what you can and can't do. So could you give us a very like top level overview of what it looks like in the US?
I will do my best. Honestly, I definitely need to introduce you to my friend Sam. She knows Sam Geiling. She knows a ton more about the legalities and all of those things, but I can absolutely speak to it. So you mentioned earlier that I'm a certified veterinary technician, and that is true. I'm in Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia. When my family's Canadian, you might hear that come out every once in a while. And then I shifted back and forth. The language, who cares? It's all a ferment a version of Britishisms, right? So anyway, I digress. So I'm a CVT in Pennsylvania. If you go up to New York, you're an LVT, a licensed veterinary technician. If you go out to California, you're a registered veterinary technician. If you go to a 4-year program to get a degree in veterinary technology, depending on the state you're in, you can be an RVTG, LVTG, which is a licensed veterinary technologist or a registered veterinary technologist. And then if you go down to Tennessee, because they like to be extra special, and there's nothing against Tennessee, I know a lot of good people from there. They are licensed veterinary medical technicians. So how many different designations is that in one country?
Yeah, that's a lot. I've lost count.
It's a lot. It doesn't make any sense, right? So, and the only reason I'm a CVT in Pennsylvania, to my limited understanding, this is why I need Sam, is that when they passed the bill, they just simply didn't change it to register. We would have been RVTs.
Wow.
So I pay my licensing fees through the state medical board. In other states, it's through the veterinary medical associations. So it depends on state to state who regulates us as technicians. Is it the state board? Is it the VMA, the Veterinary Medical Association? Is it the Vet Tech Association, if you even have one of those? Right. And then just to make it more fun, quite a few years ago, there was an initiative, and there's still some power behind it, called the Veterinary Nurse Initiative, where no one liked telling, like, and it's fair, when I tell people what I do, well, I'm a little bit different now that I run my own business, but as a technician, they're like, oh yeah, I used to be one of those. No, you didn't. Right. So it's a whole debate about, did you go to school? Did you take the national exam? Were you trained on the job? And people don't understand what a technician does. The definition is unclear. It has a negative connotation, all of those reasons. Let's call ourselves nurses. Fine, but it's a protected term in the US for human medicine.
Okay, so the word nurse is protected for human nursing.
Right. So I mean, I agree, veterinary nurse is very different, but we didn't handle that as well as we could or should have, right? So we definitely put about 60 carts before the horses, in my opinion, for that situation. Laura, really, when it comes down to it, for me, I don't care
Yeah.
what it's called. I really don't. I want one universal title. I want it to be protected for those of us that, did it the right way, right? Not that there is a right or wrong way. And this is where the can of worms gets really juicy,
Yeah.
right? Because I was trained on the job for 8 years before I went back and got my degree. I knew what to do and I was good at it,
Mhm.
but I didn't know all the whys.
Yeah.
Right. So I didn't understand the pharmacokinetics and I didn't really understand the different nerve. And I did a little bit because I had a bachelor's, but I needed to know more
Mhm.
about the whys behind the whats. And so this is definitely a profession where you need to have those differences, right? Like those recognitions of like not differences or recognitions, I apologize, but the layers to it,
Mhm.
right? You need that tactile practice, but you also need the knowledge behind it, right? So you can get in a situation and you don't panic, right? I was a lifeguard for years, and first day on the job, I was 16. I did a spinal rescue on an 8-year-old kid.
Wow.
I didn't even have to think because I was trained so well,
Yeah.
right? So there's definitely a part of that. You need to have that on the job part of it, but it is not teaching, right?
Yeah.
We don't have that universal title. We don't have liability insurance available to us through our national organization, which is the AVMA. So we legally have to work under the jurisdiction of a veterinarian, either in direct, indirect, or immediate supervision, depending on the level of skill, depending on the state, and depending on the practice.
Depending on everything, it sounds like. Wow.
Yeah, so it's how do we, and this is why it's taking so long, right?
Yeah.
And we're a relatively young profession here, right? Like the first school was in 1967 in upstate New York, right? In SUNY, Delhi. And so we were first animal health technologists, and then it shifted into veterinary technicians, and that's where we've landed.
Mm.
So it's really, it is a mess. And that's why we have to talk about it, right? To see what the pros and cons are to it. And, there's people that get their feathers really ruffled about certain things, like, we're not nurses. Well, that's true. Legally in the United States, we're not. But Laura, you're an RVN.
Mm.
And in Australia and New Zealand, they're also RVNs, right? And you are just saying this is a global profession.
Yeah, and it's the same, right? We're doing the same things a lot of the time, day-to-day practice. If you look at what our roles are day to day, what it boils down to is we're doing the same things. I would consider a lot of what we are doing to be nursing,
100%.
even if we can't call ourselves, even if, in the US, you can't call yourselves nurses, for example. I think still a great amount of what you're doing day to day is nursing your patients. It's providing that care. But it's like you say, the terminology, I think it's something that people get really stuck in. And actually what we need to focus on is actually what we're doing day to day is the same. And although it's somewhat simpler in the UK in that we don't have, tons of different post-nominals and we do have one regulatory organisation, we do still face a lot of similarities in terms of the challenges. So for US techs that are listening, in the UK, we have one sort of recognised term, which is registered veterinary nurse. So when you qualify from a certified training programme, you are an RVN. The title itself, veterinary nurse, is not protected, meaning that anyone in the UK or elsewhere for that matter can call themselves a veterinary nurse, and they're perfectly entitled to do that. There is no legal title protection for our role, which is why the word registered was added. So originally there used to be what we call a list of veterinary nurses, and once you qualified, you were just called a veterinary nurse. Because that title is unprotected, and it still is unprotected by the government currently, we added in mandatory registration to differentiate registered veterinary nurses from, I guess, what you would consider to be veterinary assistants or what we call experienced nurses in the UK. So someone that's on the job trained but hasn't gone through a formal training programme and hasn't done their exams. So we are regulated by the RCVS, the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons. They control our registration. We are also professionally accountable for our own actions. That's again something that changed with mandatory registration. We never used to be. So it used to be that the vet had overall responsibility for anything we did, meaning if there was a mistake in care, if there was something that we had done, they would be facing disciplinary action on behalf of our error. Now we are professionally accountable for our own actions, meaning that if something goes wrong, we report to a disciplinary committee and we can be sanctioned for that, including removal from the register. Because of that, it's easier now for us to get things like insurance through the VDS, which is the Veterinary Defence Society. You can get separate RVN cover. So if I was to go and work as a locum or a relief nurse in a practice, even though I'm not affiliated with a primary practice, I am covered myself as an independent person. Mm-hmm. So that's been a huge plus. But, similar to you guys, there are still challenges. We still don't have legal title protection. We still don't have the public, as a result of that and many other things, really kind of recognising and appreciating what we can do. I think we still are seen as the kind of mythical out the back people that are never really seen at the front of the hospital, and people just assume that just means we hold patients in clean kennels, and we all know that regardless of where we are in the world, what we can do is so much more than that. And in terms of further education, our options are quite limited in terms of what's recognised over in the UK. So obviously you guys in the US have the VTS, which we can talk more about, and some of us in the UK, myself included, have gone and done that, but it's not recognised over here. So the RCVS don't recognize it as like a formal recognized qualification or certification in itself. What's recognised over here is something called a Diploma of Advanced Veterinary Nursing or a Certificate of Advanced Veterinary Nursing, which is from a higher education programme that's affiliated with the RCVS. There are lots of other things that we can do, lots of other certificates and things that are available, but not very many of them come with recognition. So over here, a lot of us will carry out advanced certificates and things like that just because we want to, because we personally want to improve the care that we're providing and up level our skills, knowing that they're not necessarily going to be recognised formally or sometimes by practices.
Sounds very similar.
Yeah. And again, it all boils down to how things are different, but really how things are the same, right?
Exactly. And I think it is a big part of it, Laura, is like, and you mentioned too, is getting the public on board. And we have not
Yeah.
done a good job of that here. And it sounds like that's a global thing, right? Is understanding what it means to be a true veterinary nurse or a credentialed veterinary technician. And so I don't know if you read the AAHA Vet Tech Utilization Guidelines. I was one of the members of that. There was an amazing group of people and trying to get just a unified acronym. So it's capital C, lowercase r, VT. So credentialed vet techs.
Yeah.
There. We're CRVTs. And same thing as RVNs, right? So if we had can you imagine what it would be like if we had like a unified global title?
It would be, but also utilization, recognition, public perception, everything would improve because everyone would know where we are
and what we do. And I think that's really where the VNI comes from, right? Is when you're explaining what you do. They're like, oh, so you're like a nurse for animals. Yes. And because, and I think that's why I really appreciate the term technician too, because yes, I provide nursing care when I was in clinics, right? I haven't done that for quite some time, but we do the radiographs, we pull the labs, right? We run the labs, we place the catheters, we place the advanced catheters, right? We do the initial physical exams, we do the initial triages, we do, like the 4 things we can't do in the States are perform surgery, relay a prognosis, what could be happening, give a diagnosis, or prescribe medication. That's pretty open book for everything else.
Yeah.
But that then comes down to each state's practice act, what you're allowed to do per state, and then what the veterinarian is going to let you do in practice, right? So there's nothing that says I can't, close in a surgical procedure. And I did that for years as an assistant, right? I was called a scrub nurse in Canada, and they're very strict about who's an RVT and who isn't there. I was closing, total hips and abdominal incisions all the time. And I was cocky about it too, right? Because I had my bachelor's degree. I was like, unless you're an assistant. I was like, yeah, but I have my bachelor's degree. So this is what happens in your 20s. And then you smack into your 30s. You're like, I was jerk. I'm real sorry. And I'm very comfortable saying that now, right? Like, yeah, I needed to learn. I needed to be smacked upside the head. And, the VTS is that just brilliant humans that do this, right? It's an additional, you have to be in practice for as minimum of 3 years, but ideally 5 to get the case study hours, right? You have to write the case reports, sometimes 50 to 75 of those. And then how hard is that exam? I don't even want to think about it. It just makes me hurt, right?
Yeah.
So it's
lots of cocktails were consumed after I left mine. I'm going to be honest with you.
well, you need a vacation. I mean, it is no joke to sit through a national board exam back in my day, when I took the VTNE, it was 350 questions. It's a fraction of that now. I think it's 170. And so you do that originally, and then you go on and do this specialization. Like, come on, please give them credit. And then we went and did something real fun over here and decided to create the VPA.
Yeah.
Which is a mid-level practitioner. You really want to divide the profession. We can talk about that. So let's not do that today. And I think that's really the problem is we keep doing these things that bring us further apart. We're not educating our clients and the general public, or even our veterinarians in vet school. Some of them don't know what their teams are capable of. And then we don't utilize them in practice, and everyone's going home late. When the studies show you that if you utilize your team, receptionists, assistants, and technicians appropriately, your revenue goes up by nearly 40%.
Yeah, it's wild. The figures are astronomical. Like, I think everyone assumes that there's going to be so many issues with utilization, but actually all of the evidence shows that everything gets better when you utilize your team. And that's not just, nurses or technicians, that's everybody, utilizing everybody appropriately.
Absolutely. And I think the other part of it too is we think of ourselves in vet med as just we're so unique. All of these problems are only for veterinary medicine. These are human problems.
Yeah, they just had them before us.
Or in a different way,
Or,
right? So,
yeah,
and there's a lack of communication in so many different aspects of that. There's a lack of understanding or a willingness to understand. And then there's just willful ignorance in some cases. So it's very, it feels like a Sisyphean event, right? Like how are we going to get this boulder up this hill? And yet we keep trying
yeah,
because there's no alternative, right?
no. And that's it, isn't it? It is very much. But I think now we are having a lot more of these conversations than we previously did. Whereas before, I think we all just kind of were like, we need to just get our head down, and everyone's favorite buzzword, just be resilient, because that just tell yourself you're going to be resilient and that's going to fix it all. Yeah. For anyone listening on the audio, this is gagging on the screen currently.
It's right up
Because
there
that's
with,
what we've been
I
taught.
know.
It's just like, oh yeah, just, make do, get on with it. And actually
And get your work-life balance in order.
yeah,
I don't like that. It's an experience because I mean, my goodness, you and I both had, we've been through some stuff these past few years, right? It's been a real challenge. And there's very rare times when anything's in 50-50 balance.
no.
And so I get angry at when people are told to be resilient, find a work-life balance, and good vibes only. I do not subscribe to any of that. I'm here for all of the vibes. Come on, if you haven't seen Inside Out by now. Right. And I think Andy Rourke calls it a work-life integration, which is true because you
Mm,
have to integrate both aspects. But I like the experience more because it's like choose your own adventure, right?
yeah,
You do have that choice. Now, those of you that are working in practice know, right? You have to be there at a certain time and work your certain amount of hours. However, you do not have to stay late every day, and you absolutely must take your PTO. And by the way, please use the loo. Right? Just don't, it has to happen.
yeah.
Otherwise,
Acute
you're
kidney
gonna
injury is no fun. Don't do that to
no,
yourself.
don't do that to yourself. Personal experience, right? So there's ways to go about doing it. And I think that's where, generationally we get into those troubles too, right? Because, well, we went through it. Things were a bit different,
Mm,
right? Even 20 years ago when I got into this profession, vastly
yeah,
different.
absolutely.
And like the cost of living alone. And so it's something that we really have to take all that into consideration. So if you're looking at recognizing what people can do and then utilizing them for who they are, realizing this is not simply a US or an UK or an EU this is a global thing.
Yeah.
And I spent quite a bit of time in South America this year, which has been hashtag privilege. And there isn't a position for
Mm,
technicians or nurses there because of the overabundance of veterinary students when they graduate who aren't trained at the level that they could and should be, they are utilized in that role.
mm,
Brazil alone has 600 veterinary schools.
wow.
Right. And even they will tell you like some of them are not great, right? And it's vastly unfair to those students that have put in all that effort to
Yeah.
come out and not have a position that they're utilized and respected appropriately, right? So this is a global profession. And I've caught heat from a lot of people because I work with an NAVC, for example, and they call it, nurse and tech. Well, number one, that's alphabetical order. And number two, they serve an international community.
Mm,
And we've had speakers from the UK and Australia, and so they are nurses. And
yeah.
so they will need to be recognized as such. And we can spend our time focusing on how we're different and fighting about it until we get what we want. That's not working out so well for us on so many different fronts. So maybe let's not do that in vet med,
Yeah.
please.
Let's focus on how we're the same.
Please.
Yeah, definitely.
And it says something too about a lot of us that can't clinically do this anymore. Like, yeah,
Mm,
I cannot stand on my feet like that, and I cannot be up and down and moving in practice. And man, was I an adrenaline junkie for years. I can't.
mm.
But I didn't leave vet med.
No. And the good thing is, regardless of what your qualification is, and we know that there are so many different options now in the US, your whatever your, we'll call you CRVT or your RVN qualification, it allows you to do so much more than, I don't want to say just work in clinical practice, but it really is a passport. It unlocks so many doors. There are so many ways that we can use our skills, be that in practice or out of practice. And yeah, leaving clinical practice is not the same as leaving the profession. There are so many ways that we can make a difference, both in and out of clinical practice.
And I would encourage those of you that want to stay, right? You have to find, and that's the other part of the work that you and I both do, I think, too, is taking a look at what's happening in practices and saying, hey, I physically can't be on the floor. Can I handle the telecalls? Can I do, work on the training where I'm sitting down or functioning in a different way? Hey, I need to shift into the OR where I can sit down and be, sucked into the TPLO cave. It's a nice place in there every once in a while, right? So,
I mean, you're talking to a medicine nurse, but that's fine.
well, I mean, I could sit
You lost me at TPLO.
I'm not allowed in the endoscopy suite. I nearly broke one once, so I'm not
Everyone's nearly broken a scope once, you're fine.
Oh, it's terrifying. Oh, like just let me stay in the anesthesia. Don't ask me to help you.
Yeah. Plus, we smell in the endoscopy room. You don't want to go in there. Someone's probably like doing something to a colon.
It depends on which hole you're going in that.
Yeah.
But there's so much you can, even in medicine, there's so much you can do from a non-physical standpoint, right?
Yeah.
This doesn't go away when I'm pointing at my brain. Like your brain doesn't go away just because your body doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right. And if, my one friend, she refers to herself as the most okay vet tech ever, right? She's like, I'm never going to be the best, but I am solid and you can depend on me. And that is something to celebrate too.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's really important actually, because sometimes it can be easy over here as well for people to kind of assume that referral is better, or you're a better nurse if you're in referral. And it's like, well, no, like if you want, put me in front of a client and ask me to talk to them about flea and worm treatment, I'm screwed. Don't ask me to do that. No, general practice nurses are amazingly talented because they have to juggle so many different scenarios. I have chosen to specialize, and that means that I'm great at one thing, but actually GP nurses are also amazing at so many more things than I can.
At all the things.
Yeah, exactly.
And their people skills, right?
Yeah.
Because they've known this, this dog or this cat or this horse, right? Whatever, field that they're in since they were young. And so they have a relationship not only with the animal, but with the families.
Yeah.
And that takes a skill that a lot of people, a lifetime to master, right? To hone. I don't like the word master either, right? So I love that you said that, and it's so true. And I mean, I spent a good amount of time in GP, and I want to focus on one thing, but also the one thing that keeps me really busy and it's different every day.
Yeah.
So
I think for me, like that's why I like medicine so much, because it is the one thing, but also that one thing really quickly turns into like 10 things, because actually medicine is like lab, anesthesia, imaging,
oh my goodness,
inpatient care.
If we don't know what's going on, we send it to medicine. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
In the emergency room when I was in there, like, oh, we don't know. Call IM, send it to them. Get the internists in here. We don't know what we're doing.
So yeah, but no, and it's funny because we've obviously spoken a lot about like different challenges, be that ones we're experiencing in practice or ones we're experiencing on a profession-wide level or on a global level, or even from like a healthcare level and things like that, and in terms of what we can physically do. But I think some of the challenges that are being spoken about the most in vet med are things like utilization, burnout, moral distress, and all of this is related, right? But also in with that comes things like attrition and retention.
100%.
So the number of nurses and technicians we are losing as a result, I think, of not just utilization and burnout, but those are significant factors within it.
Yes, it is. Last time we got some numbers crunched on this, it was around like $930 million lost.
Yeah.
Burnout.
Yeah, there's
for technicians alone.
Yeah, I was reading one paper. I'll link it in the description box, but I think it's called The Economic Cost of Burnout in Veterinary Medicine, and they estimated it as something like $1 to $2 billion per year across the entire profession. So like vets and nurses/technicians. So actually, we know that these are issues that cost our industry significant amounts of money each year. So it just makes financial sense. And when we talk about what causes burnout, so I have some stats. These are predominantly from the UK. Veterinary nurses and technicians have double the burnout levels of the general population. Underutilization is one of the strongest risk factors for burnout, alongside things like pay, staffing, and workload. Burnout can occur within normal working hours when professionals are not giving meaningful opportunities to use their skills. So it doesn't matter if you're not staying late and you're taking all your PTO and you're not working through your lunch breaks and you're advocating for yourself, you can be burnt out working your normal hours in your normal job if you're not getting to use your skills, or you're not feeling utilized, or you're not being able to get the job satisfaction and the reward from your job that you want.
Oh, yes, I couldn't have said it better. That was beautifully stated. We don't catch people doing good.
Yeah.
You have no problem calling them out on something they've done wrong, but when's the last time you've caught them doing good? And it's not operant conditioning, it's a little bit, but I mean, we are creatures, we're animals too. Let's be real.
Mm.
And how good do you feel when someone says thank you, genuinely says thank you, recognizes what you've done, has a program in place like, and I tell people this all the time, my mentees when they're interviewing, is you interview them as much as they interview you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And when they talk about a training program, tell me more about that. What does that look like day to day, week to week? If they mention mentorship, well, you've been in a mentorship program. What does this look like? Do they understand what burnout looks, feels, tastes, and smells like?
Mm.
I've burnt out twice in my career, and I was headed there this past year from personal. I had 5 losses in my family. It was rough, right? And so when you get faced with that, like you have that literal sense of what is the point of what I'm doing? When you lose that, and my first burnout was in 2015, and my body physically did it for me. It's
Yeah.
like, all right, you're buckling and go get your knee replaced. Okay. When I had just been sitting there thinking like, what is the point of injecting this, doxorubicin? This dog is his 3rd cycle. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
I was in that sense of apathy, right?
It's a very real thing. I mean, I had it in 2022 and I was signed off for a few weeks. The first week I felt like I was underwater. I could not get off of the sofa. And I was getting, in the lead up to it, I was getting angry at my patients. Like not angry with them, but just angry at everything. And I could feel that I wasn't myself. And I was very consciously having to be like, I just need to take a step back from every scenario that I am in because I have lost like the fundamental capacity to be myself and to show up how I would want to show up for my patients and also for my colleagues. And I was leading a team at this time as well. So I was like, "Do you know what? I'm going to have to just tell my team I've got burnout and I'm going to have to take a few weeks off until I feel like I can come back." But as a result of that, we were able to make changes to the way that the team worked
Mm.
to prevent anyone else being in a similar situation. We identified ways that could be contributing or increasing the risk. And we put boundaries in place and we changed the way that the entire team worked to make it better for everybody. But it took being comfortable with being vulnerable and saying, actually, do you know what? I've got burnout and I can't be here.
Yeah.
But my body stopped me. I
Oh,
could not get off the sofa for a week.
100%. And that was my first kind of, there's something wrong. This is like my 4th knee surgery. What's happening here, right?
Mm.
So, and I'm not saying to any of you listening that your body's gonna shut down like that, and I really hope it does
Yeah.
not. But that was my first real like I lost the joy. I
Mm.
used to love it. It was just I'd go to work. I don't watch Grey's Anatomy anymore. It got a little Grey's Anatomy-ish, but like I loved when he would say it's a beautiful day to save lives. Like
Yeah.
I had my scrub hat. It had mermaids on it. It was a beautiful day, and it stopped being a beautiful day.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's really easy for us to forget as a profession is that actually we're supposed to enjoy it.
Hmm.
This is why we got into it. We didn't get into it because, well, especially for vet nurses and technicians, you didn't get into it because you wanted loads of money
Definitely not.
or loads of time off. We got into it because this is what we want to do. It's what we deeply in our core feel like we're here to do. And yes, work is stressful. Yes, we are faced with a huge amount of challenges. And no, I'm not saying that every day is supposed to be amazing and I'm not here for toxic positivity, but ultimately, for us to feel good in our roles, to have that job satisfaction, which we know is so closely linked to retention and attrition levels and things like that, we're supposed to turn up and enjoy it.
Yeah.
So what can we do to enjoy it more? I think is a question that we should be asking ourselves more often than we are.
And as leaders too, is what are we missing?
Yeah.
Like, are we really checking in with the team? And please, we all have said it for years. It's not the pizza parties because people with, dairy and gluten intolerance, that's not very healthy for them, right? It doesn't work. And so, are you checking in with your team? Are you truly reading the room, right? It's nothing worse than you've just gone through 3 simultaneous codes. Only 2 of them made it, and everyone's just like exhausted and drained. And the manager comes out like, "How's everybody doing?"
Yeah.
Not great. So And that's really what the work that I'm trying to do from the outside in is really from the inside out too, is taking a
Mm.
look at building programs that are not hierarchical, right? That
Yeah,
are focused on a team-based approach so everyone gets this progressive path forward. And that's what a lot of people out there are trying to do. That's what Katie and Claire are doing with Vet Empowered, right?
mm,
That's what you're doing with your educational and your speakings and your seminars and everything. It's what folks here in the US, like MentorVet, who I work with, right? It's
mm.
possibilities, it's Blend Vet, right? There are so many organizations that see this, right? And I think that's part of it is we simply need to see people
Yeah,
and value what's being seen.
for sure, definitely. And I think there are an increasing number of people and organizations out there that are helping us do all of this, which is amazing.
Mhm.
But I also think that one of the ways that we often forget about maybe is how we can stand up and advocate for ourselves more day to day in practice as
Oh,
well.
yes.
Because I do think that it's one thing to wait for change, because I do think change will come. But if we wait for change, it's going to take a lot longer. When we can all, every single one of us, go into practice and do things that make things even just 1% better for ourselves each day. And that 1% is going to add up and add up and add up. And before we know it, we're going to be making much more significant differences day to day. So I really think there's a lot to be said for how we can also
Agreed.
advocate for ourselves in practice.
And that's something you have to learn, right? Like that was, it was trending. I think it was maybe last year, maybe the year before, like advocate for yourselves.
How?
Right. Like you want to talk to me about that? So
Yeah.
of course I went to my team. I was like, we need to write something about this. Like, so how do you stand up for yourself? And it's really understanding what your voice can do and how it sounds, right? Understanding what your rights are within the practice, within, for us, the state, right? So, and not just identifying the problems, but bringing solutions to the table, right? Because it's
Yeah.
one thing to be like, this isn't right, it needs to change. Great. Do you have any suggestions? No.
Mm.
Right. So to your point, we do have to dig a little bit deeper. It's also doing some self-work on ourselves, which is not comfortable, right?
Yeah.
Right. We have to get, embrace the suck, as my business partner loves to say, which is definitely borrowed from the defense sector. But it's true. You got to get comfortable with the discomfort, right? Face the things that you've said or done that were wrong, right?
Mm.
I got put into a management situation. I wasn't even credentialed yet. And I was terrible, right? Because it was like, all right, I want to keep everybody happy. I want to be friends with everybody. And oops, I fell into the cool kids clique and really hurt someone who looked up to me. I have very few regrets in my life. That is a big one,
Yeah.
right? And it's to really take acknowledgement of what is your self-care? That is not simply taking vitamins and getting sleep. What are you doing for
Mm.
yourself, right? That is, do you understand what your emotional intelligence quotient is? Do you know your EQ? What are your core values? Why are you mad going to work? Well, maybe your values don't align with the practice values,
Yeah.
right? Understanding that conflict isn't the problem, it's how we manage it. Because conflict is always going to be there, right?
Yeah.
And having a sense of cultural awareness and humility, like a growth mindset, not a closed mindset. So it is a multifactorial journey. And that's why this is such a rampant problem, too, don't you think, Laura? Because it's work
Yeah.
that we don't want to do just one more thing. And I
It is.
trust me, I have days I truly understand that. But if we don't do this work, right, two things can be true. We have to do this work
Yeah.
for ourselves, for our family, our friends, so they want to actually spend time with us. So we want to be a part of what they're doing, and for our colleagues, our teammates, and our profession.
Mm.
Have to be willing to put our toes in the cold water and sometimes take that plunge.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is just a case, I mean, I say this as well as a British person, and we are stereotypically afraid of conflict more so than anyone else and don't like doing anything that's going to put anyone out. But ultimately, I think you have to think of the benefits that come with it, not just for yourself, as you say, but also for your colleagues, for your teams, ultimately for your patients and for the entire profession. Because well, nothing changes if nothing changes, right? If we don't stand up and say something, then things are not going to change.
Exactly. And that whole, if not you, then who? Well,
Yeah,
if not me, then we'll never see.
yeah, for sure. So I'm so, so grateful. I'm very mindful of your time, so I'm going to wrap things up here.
Oh,
But I'm
yours too.
so grateful for you coming on and chatting because I think this is, yeah, this is just what everyone needs to hear. And it really is a problem that we are facing globally. And so I think we as professionals have a responsibility to work together globally to overcome it, because we can do so much good individually, but even more together collectively. So thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your words of wisdom, and also for giving us UK nurses a glimpse into what you guys are facing over there. Maybe that's opening a can of worms. I was going to say professionally, but also
we definitely don't
won't open that. But, yeah.
No, I'm so grateful that, you know, we've just stuck to this, and like, we're gonna get this, we're gonna have this conversation, and I am so appreciative of you and all that you've done and continue to do, and really grateful to have had this time with you today.
So much. So everyone that's listening, I'm going to drop all of the information about where you can find Liz and EVT and everything also in the description below the episode. And if you're listening from the US, obviously you'll be able to sort of connect with her, and if you've got any training needs and things like that, you can reach out and get that sorted. But yeah, thank you so much again for taking the time to speak with me. Thank you everyone for listening, and I look forward to speaking to you all in a future episode.
Have a great day, everyone.
If you've made it this far, then thank you so much for listening all the way to the end of the episode. And I have one more thing to ask of you before you go today. I would love to hear from you. Yes, you. I love hearing about the cases that you're seeing, the skills that you're using, and the conditions that you want to learn more about. Drop me a DM on Instagram. I'm at Vet Internal Medicine Nursing, and don't be shy. Come on over, say hello, and tell me a bit more about you. Talk to you soon.